Hi,
Way.
welcome to my studio. I'm going to try to switch the camera around so you're not looking at my face. So this is where my studio is, and that's Jerome Street Studios, and that's actually where I live. So I'll take you into the studios, kind of like how I come to work. Jerome Street Studios, we rent out to separate artists. This is Adam LaRusso's studio. And we also have the gallery, which is temporarily being used by my oldest son to do some fashion design. And my two other children are working in the kitchen. They're taking classes from home. And Callie is actually in grad school, so she's teaching classes too. So this is Lindsay Caputo's studio. And this is Earl Howard's pottery studio. Here's some of my artwork on the walls that I store down here because I never have enough space. And this is Sheila Corkery's jewelry studio. And this is my studio, so you can see my stairs going up. So this artwork is left over some of the pieces that I did for the Darker Joy show at the Cambridge Art Association. I don't know, it's a little bit of glare, but they're prints on old coloring book pages. And I'll go up to my studio. Some of these, I have a lot of work. I'll try to go slower because it's not really in focus. Hold on. This is my kind of wall where I put things that I want to think about or I want to try. So one artist, I don't know if you guys know, her name is, why is this not focusing? Deborah Roberts. She just was supposed to have a show at in New York and it was canceled, but I love her work. So I'm kind of looking at her. I have a few other artists up here. This is one of my bigger pieces that I never have enough room for storage, so I've got like work everywhere in here. So I'll kind of turn around slowly. That's these are so the prints I make risograph prints, I make digital prints, and I make screen prints. So here's an example of a screen print I did on a map. This is one of my risograph prints. And this is a digital print. This is a upside down screen print. This is a screen print that's been modified a bit. And then I have my printing station where I do some of my digital printing. Some of my collage paper that I use. I recently was making a lot of fake money. So I've got a big stack of fake dollars for a bigger piece that is right there, kind of stacked up. These are some risograph prints that I collaged. So it's kind of a half risograph print, half collage. I did a couple of these. And this is a screen print that I did. I have a whole stack of screen prints. I can pull more of those out if people are interested. I'm trying to just see if I can. I have some really big pieces that I pulled out that I do on plywood. This is one of them. And let's see here. Here's another one. These are three more that I have to get far away from because they're big. So they're like that. I can pull these all out if people want to look. So this is kind of like the back half of my studio where I do my keep the prints area is kind of my clean area. Am I back? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. I can't. Okay. So I try to keep this area clean. I have my varnishes, my paint brushes, a lot of little storage cubbies where I put some bits and pieces. silver foil, metal foil. I did a thing with, what were those called? Bell charms from the 80s that I stick in there. Just lots of little bits and pieces. And then over here is, like I said, paper. That's where I store my latchkey girls. I can show you more of those if you like. And then this side is kind of the working side of my studio, where it's very dusty and messy and there's paint on the floor and dust everywhere, and that's where I work. So that's my screen printing corner of my studio. And then this is my work table that I made out of hollow core door and two kind of, what are those things called? You know, sawhorses. And it's all, I can collapse it all and move it around. So if I need more, yeah, it collapses. I can stack it up, move it around. So it's really, I'm moving a lot of things in here because I don't have enough space to do really big pieces. So I'm kind of shoving everything around. Those are my screens underneath there under the plastic. So this is where I work.
May I ask you a question? This is Elena.
Sorry, we're going to hold questions until the end.
Ah, okay.
Yep.
Okay. Sorry.
Right. No, so this is my screen printing area. These are my tools that I almost use every day. It's just basically a drafting pencil and my X-Acto blade and my cutting board and the straight edge. This is the piece I'm starting right now, my newest piece, and I'm really excited about it. I'm always excited about my pieces when I start them. This is kind of what she's going to look like eventually, something like that. Probably not exactly. So I'll get back to that. This is kind of where all my paints are. That's my library. A lot, my screen printing inks, my India inks, my alcohol inks, my acrylic paints, sandpaper, and caustics. I do a lot of stuff. All my toys. This is all my latchkey girls, and I'll get into those a little bit, but basically this is my wall of the portraits I take of the girls that I use in all my pieces. And this is kind of my candy, because I can't do anything without Smarties. And I made some t-shirts and some notebooks for open studios, which isn't gonna happen. And here's a screen print. This is a 3-color print I did. And this is a screen print on a glitched New York Times piece of newspaper where the printing was completely off. I feel like things aren't very much in focus. You can't really see, but anyways, that was a good one. Here's another big piece that I did on plywood. So I've been working a lot on plywood lately, 3/4 inch plywood, just because it's super fun to work on. I can sand it, glue it, step on it. I work on my floor a lot. It just really takes a lot of abuse all the time. So, and I did some of these little latch girls that were in lunch boxes. I just had to photograph a bunch of these to send off to Brenda Taylor, because she's a gallerist that might try to sell those. Those are, oh, Erin, you know this. You have, these are the little screen print saints on little prayer cards that I did around Christmas. I have some of those left. So that was kind of a fast and shaky tour of my studio. But before I turn it around again, I think what I want to do is just kind of start talking about how this all started with the latchkey girls. So all of my girls start out as one of these. And what it is, it's a Dawn doll that's been spray painted and encased in plaster. Then I ink her in with alcohol inks and put her in a wooden frame like this. And then once I feel like she's set, they each get these like crazy little features. I take a macro photographic portrait of them, and then that's where I get these. I'll walk over here again. These portraits. So these are all my latchkey girls. So I have about 50 finished. And they all start out as basically the same doll, but by the time they've been plastered and inked, they all get personalities, and then I give them all different names. And the names started out as girls I knew when I was a kid. And now I kind of ran out of those. So now I just use names that are like time period appropriate. So like 70s and 80s, mostly 70s names. Anyways, so that's, and then I digitally manipulate. So like these faces are the girls' faces. And down here on the Saint series, that's a Lizzie face. That's a Tanya face. Sometimes I forget their names. That's so sad. And that's a Deanna face. So they've been digitally added to an old print, probably an etching of a saint. Then I add some other features like the television and the key, and I put it on plywood. Sometimes I add things. So like on these, which I love. So that's Saint Shannon. She's the patron saint of smoking in the girls' bathroom. She's holding a cigarette and a hall pass. And this is her bathtub shrine. And down here are all the things that kids would leave at like a saint shrine. So like fake candy cigarettes and little toys and coin purses and stormtrooper figure things, generally from when I was a kid, like those little ugly troll dolls. So I've been working on that series. There's 3 of those finished so far. And then I did maybe 5 of these ones that I call the landscape series. Sorry, it's so shaky. So these are my landscapes, and they're on like a moon with little air bubbles where they live. So a lot of these are about what survives in isolation and topics like that. This one, almost the newest one, this is called The Stress of Her Regard. And if you get close, I don't know if you can see, but they're huge garbage heaps. And it's about garbage and the expectations in society for women to look a certain way. And that kind of regard does not always come from men, but it comes from within. Anyways, so, you know, my work is a little sarcastic and you shouldn't take it too seriously. It's always bright and maybe a little bit grouchy. So how am I doing on time? I feel like I went really fast.
You're doing great. We're at 12:45, so.
Okay.
Perfect.
So should I keep talking about the studio, or do you want to give people a chance to ask questions, or?
What do you feel like doing?
I feel like, why don't we let some people ask about maybe what they'd like to see some more of, because there's so much going on.
Yeah.
I could give them a chance to say, like, I want to go back and see this piece, or how does that sound?
That sounds perfect. We have a couple of questions so far. I'm gonna call on Amantha Tesaros first. So you're unmuted, Amantha.
Okay. Hi.
Hi, Amantha, how are you?
I have a bunch of questions. On St. Shannon on the plywood.
Yes.
The color, I wanted to ask you how the color is applied and if I could get a close-up of that.
Yeah, okay. I'm gonna get close to you again. Hold on. Let me get a big view of my hand. Okay, so St. Shannon is on plywood, but if you look closely, the first thing I do is I collage newspapers on the background. So all the plywood, and so the colors are from like the New York Times, like, I don't know what section this was. Depending on how colorful the sections are in the New York Times, I'll save the colors and I'll sort them and rip them up. And then I'll use them in the background to add color like that. So like I save the green to put in the grass at the bottom where it looks like grass. And I tried not to be too careful to fill in the flowers with the color, because when you step back, it looks better not to be too persnickety about it. Like I just want the idea of color.
I love that.
Got it?
Got it. Wow.
And then, you know, I work over the collage newspaper with the Xerox transfer print. So that's where the black and white image comes from on top of the collage newspaper.
Oh, so you can Xerox transfer print onto paper?
Yeah, so the newspaper is varnished heavily onto the board. So it's a little bit paper. So when you're rubbing off the paper from the Xerox print transfer, you have to be careful not to rub too much because then you'll rub the newspaper off too. So it's a little finicky, but not too bad, actually. It works pretty well.
That's great.
Thanks.
That's great. So one more question.
Yeah.
The last one you showed us about her regard, I can't remember the whole title. Is that yellow?
The stress.
Yeah. Is that yellow? Is that gold? Is it like a metallic gold, or is that just yellow?
No, that's my cadmium medium yellow hue that I use on everything. So it is just, I love that yellow. I'm in love with this yellow. I just love it. So they're shooting ray beams out. I don't know if you can see them, but where the ray beams hit the girls, they turn into skeletons a little bit. So it's just the idea of the female, the pressure society puts on women to be thin and beautiful and just right. And the stare can really make you feel exposed like a skeleton. But that's that same yellow that's there and there and behind there and there. I do love this yellow. So, all right.
Thank you.
It's all the same yellow.
We have a question from Carol Koskalowski.
Carol, I do know Carol.
Go ahead, Carol.
Thanks. Stephanie, I was just wondering if during this time, if you were creating any particular art in response to the pandemic. I know other artists are doing that.
Yeah, so I feel like right from the beginning, my art's pretty apocalyptic in general. Like a lot of this I've been doing for a long time, kind of end of the world. You know, I don't know if you can see in the background, but there's been a shipwreck and there are little bodies floating in the water. So I didn't really feel like I needed to respond to the pandemic right now, just because a lot of my work is already thinking about the end of the world and, you know, global crises and things like that. So yeah, I just am happy to be able to do it, really. And to be able to be in my studio during this time. And my kids are all home, which for me is wonderful. So while it's stressful and everybody's stressed out, I do feel like my art is kind of an escape from the real world. Maybe that's a better way to say it. So I don't work with that. And all the end of the world stuff is from when I was growing up in the 80s and nuclear war, and there was supposed to be like, too many people in the world and we were all going to starve, and everybody would have like a 2-foot square room of space to stand in. And, it was like a whole different time and different worries, and the Russians were going to get us all. And so that's more what I think about. So I try not to think about current horrible things.
Okay, we have a question from Elena. Go ahead, Elena.
Thank you, Stephanie. So my question is, when you were showing your you mean screen print, that's silk screen print, right?
Yes.
So how do you develop like your dark room and all that?
Yeah, so in the downstairs bathroom, which I don't have it set up right now, but what I do is I take my screens and I turn the downstairs bathroom into, actually I can take you down there if it will make everybody seasick.
Yeah.
So all I do is I put a contractor bag over the bathroom window, tape it up, and that pretty much keeps out all the light. And then, so this is the bathroom. And this is kind of where I burn the screens. And so what I do is off the ceiling here, I hang my 2 photo lamps that burn the screens. And in the bathroom up here, I have my red lights that I can turn on that won't burn the emulsion. And then I have my washout sink right here. So it's very tiny. I can do one screen at a time. It's totally claustrophobic. And I don't do them in the winter because my washout sink isn't strong enough to wash out the already burned emulsion. So I do that in the backyard with the hose. So this is kind of my summer burning setup, and then I run it out downstairs to the backyard and burn it back there. So it's not perfect, but it works. I mean, I've done about a dozen screens that way. And actually for Christmas this year, I got a laundry sink that my family says they're gonna help me set up in the basement with a pressure hose. So hopefully that'll help too.
Wonderful. Emily Sharon has a question. Go ahead, Emily.
Okay.
Hi, Stephanie, I'm so excited to see your studio. You know I love your glasses. I love your steps. I'm obsessed with the yellow. I need more t-shirts, so I was so excited to see your t-shirt.
Yeah.
And then I was wondering, were you showing, I'm sorry, I wasn't able to be on the audio earlier. Did you have art pieces in lunchbox, right behind you? Are they in lunch boxes?
Yes. Yeah, let me turn it around. Sure. So,
Are those 3D?
yeah, they come out from the wall, and the girls are like, you know, like Han Solo and Kryptonite, or in, what was Han Solo in? Carbonite. In the Star Wars movies?
Yeah.
You know, come on.
I know, I'm sorry.
So
I don't know why I can't remember it, but.
Anyway,
Do it
they're like
Carbonite.
half
Or something.
Carbonite. Thank you.
These are so cool.
So they're like in the plaster kind of walking out a little bit. You can kind of see it there. And they come with lids. So when they get shipped, they ship with the lid. But when they hang on the wall, they just get displayed like that.
Oh, that is so cool. Yeah. And I don't know if you've answered these questions before, but do you have, do you have opening up plans? Or I don't know if this is an appropriate question or not, but I'm just curious.
Yeah, we're doing the same thing that everyone else is doing. So the artists in Jerome Street studio aren't really coming at all. They're all self-quarantining or in lockdown or whatever. So they, once in a while, if they need like a something from their studio, like a material or something, they'll come in and pick it up, but we're really not all hanging out. Oh, I did it again, sorry. We're not all hanging out the way we used to be. So I can't cardboard holder. Yeah, so I'm not opening up anytime soon, or I will when the government, the government says we can.
Okay, great.
But West Medford Open Studios is doing an online thing all week. So if you have artists that you have always liked and you want to buy something from, most artists have websites online, or if you contacted them about something, they're all desperate to sell. So and they ship, everybody ships. So if you need art, you can usually find it. So I would say,
I can buy from you from a distance. Is that?
Yes, exactly.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. Thanks for sharing. So good to see your studio and you.
Yeah, it's good to see you.
Do we have any other questions from anybody? Go ahead and type them in the chat, or you can raise your hand. Not actually raise your hand. There's like a function to raise your hand. While you're thinking about questions that you have.
I think Karen Watson raised her hand. I could see
Karen
her.
Watson raised her hand. Okay, Karen, I'm going to unmute you. I just have to find you in my little list. Go ahead, Karen.
Well, I love your work. It's so beautiful. It's so original. And I thank you so much for sharing your studio. And I'm wondering if you have a regular routine of working when you're in your studio. I'm always interested in other artists' schedules. Do you have a regular schedule, or do you, I know things are different right now with your kids.
Yeah. So before the quarantine, usually I would get everybody off to school and work in the morning, and then I'd work in my studio, usually from like 9 until 2 every day. You know, with 4 kids, there's always something going on. So on a good day, I'll be in there from 9 to 2. And then recently, with everybody home, there's a lot more going on. So I try to get in here probably like 3 or 4 hours a day, but it doesn't always work out like that. But again, I've learned, you know, just to be hugely flexible when it comes to my time in art. So I squeeze it in when I can. And it drives my family crazy because even when I'm not in my studio, they can tell I'm thinking about it. So I'll be totally tuned out and staring off into space. And they're like, you're thinking about art, not us.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Sure.
Oh, Diane Nelson has a question.
Okay.
All right. Diane, where are you? There we go. Go ahead, Diane. Are you unmuted?
Oh, wait a minute.
Yep, go ahead, Diane.
Okay. I'm curious about your latchkey girls, because that face is so distinctive. I mean, I would recognize your work anywhere. And I wonder, how long have you been using that particular look for the latchkey girls?
So let me think about when I started these. So it's probably been like six or 7 years.
Okay.
I always underestimate and am horrified to realize it's longer than that, but I think it's about that long. And I can show you. So the way I got the kind of idea in the beginning was I had another artist that I knew who went to a workshop, and she did this project where they took a piece of metal that they found like outside, like abandoned, and they sunk it into plaster. And as it dried, all the rust kind of came off the plaster. And I was like fascinated by that idea of something like dissolving into the plaster and losing itself in the plaster. So I kind of wanted to do it, but using kind of my colors and my girls. So I did, the first one I did was I spray painted the doll white, and then I colored her in the watercolors in the hopes that when she went into the plaster, all the watercolor would kind of come off into the plaster, and it totally didn't work. So add up. So then the next try I did, which is what I do now, is once they're in the plaster, I color them in with alcohol inks, and then I use denatured alcohol, and I wash the plaster with a denatured alcohol, and that draws the inks out of the plaster, I mean off the girl and into the plaster. So let me see, like on this one, the inks really spread a lot. That's Kendall, and she's like horror. She's a terrible child, but so depending on how much of the spread, they kind of get their different personalities. And anyways, so that's kind of how I came up with the idea of the latchkey girls. The first couple worked so well, that's when I started to give them names. That's Anna Marie, and they all got their own personalities. So these are all of them: Una, Rose, Kendall, Becky. Wow. They're all stacked up. I don't know if you can see all the way back there, but so in some of them, so this is Deanna, and she's not in her wooden frame yet because I've been doing other things. So that's kind of how it all started and how long I've been doing it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. While you think about questions you might have, I'm going to briefly share my screen because someone had a question about where they might be able to purchase Stephanie's work or learn more about it. So you can see Stephanie's website, which is stephanietodhunter.com. And then you can also follow her on Instagram at stephanietodhunterart. You can also follow her at Jerome Street Studios, but I don't have that listed on here because only so much space on every PowerPoint slide. And Also, I'm going to make my weekly pitch. This is our only studio visit this week. We actually had our CAA Day celebration last Friday in place of our annual fundraiser. And with the help of our wonderful community, we raised just over $10,000 for the Cambridge Art Association, which is really amazing. But we're still fundraising throughout all of this. We still don't know when we're reopening, and no one knows what the next year is going to look like. But if you've enjoyed this and want to support the CAA, you can visit our website at cambridgeart.org/annual-fund to make a donation. So I'm going to turn that share off. Any last questions for Stephanie while we're hanging out in her studio? Nope. Okay. Well, Stephanie, thank you so much. It was so fun to see your space. Actually, we visited your studio with CAA right before all of this happened on February 29th. That feels like a million years ago.
I know. Hard to believe. We saw each other in person.
I know. And being in your space, so we had 29 people visiting today. So we wouldn't have been able to fit in there together. So this was pretty cool to be able to do this virtually. So our next visit is next Tuesday, May 19th, with Claudia Ruiz Gustafson. I recommend that you sign up online for that. And until then, I'm gonna unmute everybody and say thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Bye.
Everything's
Stephanie.
great.
It was really fun.
It's really fun. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. I love your work.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Yeah, I love your work. Yeah.
So thank you all. I hope we will see you next time.
Thanks, Stephanie. Great.
Thank you.
Thank
See
you.
you.
Yeah,
Very interesting. Thank you.
yeah, beautiful
Thank you.
work. Thank
Yeah.
you so much. Thank you, Erin.
Thank
Thank you. It was great.
Adventurous
Bye-bye.
experimental
Bye-bye.
work.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you. Stay safe.
Hey, Siddhartha.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hey, Amantha.
Hey.
It's like Hollywood Squares.
I know it is. They pop up as they go by.
So Stephanie, I did save the chat so you can see what everybody said and positive comments
Okay.
and all of that. And I'll have the video up now with my faster internet speeds, hopefully by next Monday.
Okay.
All right, so thank you. Have a good one.
Thanks. Should I hang up? Should I wait till everybody goes?
Meeting now.
Okay. All right.
Bye.